Joe, welcome to the Tales of Leadership podcast, brother. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Josh. I'm all fired up now. That intro music, man.
Yeah, it's all about like getting in like the right headspace and timing for me. So like I play that to like be fully present and like in the moment. So now I'm locked in to podcast host and trying to like get the best value out of you so I could grow as a leader too. So I'm glad you like that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I feel like there should be like some B-roll footage of like one of us putting a kettlebell down and then wiping sweat off our brows. But that was
Yeah,
awesome.
man. So I'm really excited for this, and then publicly, just like thank you. So I was able to mutually get connected with you through one of our friends that we know, and then I've been following your content. It's funny, like we've been like almost on the same journey. I think you've been in that space now for a little bit longer, but I think we have the same purpose and passion. Is that like leadership development is fundamentally critical to the legacy of not just like the future of our military, but like our nation. And I've taken this as a standpoint as like podcasting allows me to have like one-on-one conversations with people like you that are figures in that space and that I could pick their brains from and then also just share that with. So thanks for being intentional with me because I know you're a busy man. You just flew from DC.
Dude, that was a drive. That was a drive.
You drove to DC.
I drove. I did a 24-hour turn and burn
Wow.
to get in 2 recordings, and then I had to get back here to Southern Pines for dinner. So yeah, don't recommend it at all. But it was awesome, man. And to your point, like I that's one of the biggest things about podcasting that I love so much are like these conversations that like you and I are having. I've learned so much from the show being able to talk to guests. And I think it's the conversations that
Yeah.
a lot of those lessons just really stick with me. I'm sure it's the same for you.
Yeah, no, 100%. Now I fully regret the last 2 years of not reaching out to you before, because I would go to Southern Pines and Fort Bragg every single week, and I would make that drive from Virginia. So knowing that you were there, we would have went to like Hawks and got like a
Uh,
bourbon or something like that.
that would have been great. Yeah, I mean, I just moved back in August. We spent 2 years in Germany,
Wow.
and I'm still enjoying it though.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. It's like a hidden nugget for sure.
It is.
So kind of starting off, I always love the first question with every one of our guests, and this really sets the barometer for the podcast episode is like, how do you define leadership? And I'm really curious from that aspect from you because you've interviewed like some of the most strategic level leaders. You just talked to Dan Driscoll, the Sec Army, Stan McChrystal yesterday, like all influential leaders like within the nation. But how do you define leadership in your terms?
It's really interesting that you asked that. Like I know there's like a bunch of different leadership definitions. And I'm actually writing about it this week. Like so this is very fresh on my mind.
Oh
I
well,
think leadership is a role we choose to play. And I think that kind of like a movie part, like
yeah.
an actor, like there's a set of responsibilities, behaviors, and costumes that come
Mm,
with that. And I think it's incumbent on us as individuals to study those roles that we're about to step into
yeah.
for leadership. And, I think, especially when we're talking about the military and more senior levels of leadership, I think it takes a really long time to study those parts. And we do it through reading, we do it
Yeah.
through conversations like you and I are having, and we do it by observing the folks that come before us. And so I think it's so I guess I'm not answering your question like as the standard thing, but I think that that's a big thing is that that's like kind of like the three parts of leadership: the costume, the behaviors, and the responsibilities. And we've got to figure out what those are.
I love that, and one of the best definitions that I ever had was from General Petraeus, and I still kind of go back to his. Is like, tell me what you need from the organization or the team, and then I'll tell you what my leadership philosophy or leadership style will be. So it's just all the tools in our rucksack that we collect through shared experiences with whatever we went through our lives, and then applying the right tools at the right time. And I love how you articulated like different costumes that we wear. I've never thought of it through that. I just keep it like I know you're an armor guy. I'm an infantry guy, so I like to keep it simple, stupid. I'm like 1 degree away from the Marine Corps and eating crayons. I like to joke.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Austin Kleon. I don't know if you've read his books, To Steal Like an Artist. And we were having this conversation about, like I think he was talking about, we were talking about maybe it was Robert Caro, who still puts on a suit every day, even though he's walking into a research library to
Mm,
research, the books he's been writing on Lyndon Johnson. And he was talking like he knows people who will like put on like a chef's outfit if they're cooking or grilling dinner that night.
mm,
And when I was in command, and this was something I had picked up, I started picking up with my time in JSOC, was that when I went to work, I was wearing civilian clothes. And then when I came home from work, I was wearing civilian clothes. And it
mm,
was kind of a way for me to like shed that identity as the
yeah,
commander when I was home with my wife and kids. Is to like, it was almost like a physical uh, act that I could do to remind myself that I'm going home to be a husband and a father and not Lieutenant Colonel Byerly. And I think that like when I would put that uniform on, and people would joke all the time that like it took me a really long time to get the uniform on. I would sit in PTs all day if I
yeah,
could.
yep,
When I put the uniform on, it was time to get to work. Just like,
yeah,
if the CEO, she walks into the organization with her suit on, everybody knows she's down for business. If a chef walks in, it's time for omelets. So I think
yeah,
like the uniform is not only a signal to others that
mm,
it's time to get to work, it's a signal to ourselves that it's time to work or it's time to, you know, switch to that different role. And so like these days, like what I'm wearing right now is my uniform. I get up, I put stuff on, and then I sit down to read or write.
that's such a great way of kind of framing that. Because when I was a company commander, it'd be the same way. I would show up in like my civilians. I'd unlock the skiff every day for the team, and then I'd be in my PTs. I do PT with my guys. I go do PT again. Maybe go drink a coffee. Delay putting on my multicams because I knew once that happened, it was showtime.
Yeah,
But going home, I would always transition into my civilian clothes. And I never thought about that, like from that lens of like shedding that identity or a part of myself so I could show up as a more authentic husband and father because family is huge to me. So it's interesting how you frame that. I look forward to reading that article.
yeah, and then like I go back to I've been thinking about this the last couple of years. Like I go back to Scott O'Neill. You were talking about just this opportunity to interview folks, and I remember I think, and I'm gonna mess this story up, but like Scott O'Neill was the president of Madison Square Gardens, and like the Knicks had lost, and he was angry. He was at home, and he's just kind of like acting like a brat
Yeah.
because they lost the game, and his wife reminded him that like, hey, like you're here at home, like you're a dad, you're a husband, like we need you.
Yeah.
And so it was like it snapped him out of that. And so like on the way home, he would talk about, making that transition from, the president of Madison Square Garden or the CEO of the 76ers to, just being Scott or dad.
Mm.
So I think that was a couple of years ago where I did that interview. And that's just kind of stuck with me since then.
Yeah, I think reflecting on that with my next job of where I'll be transitioning up to the Pentagon, like leaving SOCOM wearing civilians every day, and then now working up in the Pentagon, like that bus ride. I was dreading that, like the transport there, but like now I'm actually like looking forward to it because I think that's going to be my decompressive window, like reading a book or listening to a podcast, just to decompress the day to show up either for work or for the family, vice
Yeah,
versa.
it's so important. And I remember I had I worked like 12 minutes from door to door when I was a major, and it never seemed like I got that time.
Yeah.
Like it was awesome because I lived so close to work, but I never felt like I got to take off the uniform of the Iron Major when I got home, and I
Mm,
was still wound up about the day. And so when I was in command, it was like a 35-minute commute home from where I worked. And I actually enjoyed that. It was
yeah.
listen to music, listen to podcasts. It was a great amount of time to decompress before I got home.
Yeah, dude, 100%. I think you and I share that. So I got to ask, like, where do you think your leadership journey started? So you went to school at the University of North Georgia.
Right.
Uh, do you know Ramsey Oliver by chance?
Yeah,
Colonel.
I remember Ramsey was an upperclassman.
I just left. He was my PEO for Soft Warrior within the SOCOM acquisition model. He is hands down, I'm not saying this because used to work for him, one of the best leaders I've ever served in terms of just being like the right level of like in the weeds and the details, but like giving you mission command to like operate and like go do what you needed to do. But I'm wondering, like, is there something in the water there? Because that's such a small school, and I've heard so many great officers that come from that school.
Yeah, I think so, and I think there's a couple of reasons for it. One is, like, as I look back on my life, like, I didn't commission until I was, what, 22? But, like, I've been waking up at 6:30 putting on a uniform since I was 18 years old,
Oh well.
because you do PT 5 days a week there. And what was interesting about that place is that because it was a mix of both military and civilian, at 5 o'clock after the flag goes down at the flagpole and the cannon fires, it's time to put regular clothes on and go do other things.
Mm,
Go to parties, go be social, but like take your uniform off. And so not only were we in charge of people and we had responsibilities, like I remember as a sophomore, if one of my freshmen were like failing a class, like it was on me to make
yeah.
sure that they got counseling, not counseling, but what's no, what's it called, man? When in college, when you tutoring. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I
been
was
a
gonna
hot
say
minute.
development.
Yeah, so like I had to find a math tutor for him, and I remember when I was struggling as a freshman in math, my cadet squad leader, found a tutor for me. So I think there's that. I think it's the
Yeah,
fact that from a very early age there, like you're taught leadership, and then
yeah.
also because of the civilian component of it, you have to take your uniform off. You don't just swim in it 24/7 like they
Mm,
do at some of the service academies. So I think that's a huge reason for it. And like you said, there's a lot of great leaders that come out of there. The current commander of the 75th
yeah.
is a North Georgia grad. Our mutual friend Jason Lewis is a North Georgia grad. And like we were even laughing. You got the MacArthur Award behind you. I think there was a year where there was like there was like Alan Kehoe got it, Dan
Yeah.
Kearney got it, and then I got it, and Tim Palmer got it. Like it was like 4 years in a row. It was like a North
You won the
Georgia.
MacArthur Award too?
I do, yeah.
That's awesome,
It's
bro.
over there, yeah, man. So, yeah, it's definitely something in the water at that school.
Yeah, that's I was always curious, like its proximity to Ranger School. So Mountain Phase, Dahlonega, Georgia, and that was honestly like my favorite phase kind of going through. But I was just curious, like that university somehow because its proximity to Ranger School in Dahlonega, if like there was a reason that there was just a good culture within the
Yeah, it's
organization.
a force field that
Yeah.
uh, it's a force field that goes around Camp Merrill out to the university there, and we get the Ranger vibes.
Yeah. So kind of transitioning as like a young officer, going in, getting in the armor branch. What was that like? Because I always love talking and hearing people's perspectives of, hey, you were in a school setting, learning how to lead soldiers, but then hey, young Joe, you now have a platoon and you're in charge of them. How was that transition like?
Yeah, I've joked around about this quite a bit. Like I was a late bloomer when it came to this reading, writing, and taking the profession seriously.
Yeah.
I got pieces of it, and I was definitely like I understood leadership, but I don't think I quite understood officership
Yeah.
as well as I could have. And the role again, talk about roles, the responsibilities and behaviors that come along with that. Like I was my last 2 years at North Georgia, I was very focused on throwing the best parties. And so I still had that college
Yeah.
mindset when I got in the army. And so it actually took leaders, seeing what right looked like on multiple times and really
Yeah.
strong NCOs to get me refocused, reoriented on the profession. And it wasn't until I was a captain that I really just discovered this love of reading, love of writing, and really, I would say, like, doubled down on my roles and responsibilities as a professional United States Army officer.
Yeah, that'd be a great like transition question too. Is do you remember like the first time that you wrote or read something that was like meaningful and impactful to you? Because like this is what you do now in a civilian world. But do you remember the first time that you actually journaled and where like it just clicked of like, hey, this is a great habit that I need to start doing?
Yeah, I don't know if I've told this story before, now that you've asked it. So
Ooh,
I'll talk
best
about
question ever.
I'll talk about writing specifically. I remember my S3 when I was a lieutenant was like, "Hey, reach out to Infantry Magazine and look for
Mm.
this obscure article." And like he wasn't describing it that well. And so I ended up reaching out and she saw that I had armor in my signature block. And because the infantry and armor school were about to combine, they at the maneuver center that was about to happen. She was like, "Hey, we're looking for armor officers to write articles for Infantry Magazine. Will you
Mm.
write something?" And we had just come back from Arslick, and we wrote about the benefits of the training we received at the reconnaissance surveillance leaders course.
Yeah.
And it was really cool, man. As a lieutenant, for the first time, seeing I co-authored it with a couple folks, but to see like your name on a, to feel it like in a
Yeah.
magazine, and so that was like the first time. And then reading, I think for me, like I again, great examples. Like I had a commander when I was a second lieutenant that was just like, "This is what we do," and it took a while for that to click in. But when it did, I remember reading a book called "The Last Place on Earth" about
Yeah.
two polar explorers who raced to the South Pole. One guy, uh, like, just used his own experience, and this
Mm.
particular guy, the only reason he was even doing that was to hopefully get promoted to admiral in the British Royal Navy. The other guy was passionate about polar exploration and spent his entire life studying it. One team made it back, everybody came home alive. The other team, everybody died.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I'm pretty sure with that setup, you can figure out which one was which.
Yeah.
Um, but then that kind of like showed me that, okay, like as a professional, my job is to do everything I can to prepare for leading people. So that was about captain when that happened. And then journaling, I came back from Afghanistan in 2020. Was
Mm.
just struggling a lot personally, and I was
Yeah.
like, something's got to give. And I tried the Daily Stoic journal book and I started following their prompts initially. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I don't really want to talk about this. I want to talk about what's going on in my life right now. And then under their prompts, I started writing a recount of my day. And then eventually, I finished that book and I was like, you know what? I got to keep journaling. So I started my own notebook. And that was like 5 years ago. And Josh, the one thing that journaling's taught me is the person that we spend our most time with, ourselves, we are
Yeah.
least acquainted with. And so I've learned so much through journaling. Like I couldn't imagine being where I'm at in life and not taking the time to reflect.
Yeah, it's funny, man, that it was almost the same time. I was driving across country after getting my master's at the Naval Postgraduate School. It was like the end of 2020, and I just wasn't in a good mental space either, right? Like I made that transition in acquisitions, and I'm like questioning myself, hey, did I make the right decision? Because I was doing well in the infantry, and I love
Yeah.
being around soldiers, and then that was like one of my big fears. And I read the books. It was called The Miracle Morning. I was like, maybe I need to try a habit, right? And then one of those part of the savers was essentially like journaling. They call it scribing, but you couldn't fit a
Yeah.
J in the acronym savers.
Okay. There you
Uh,
go.
and I started journaling, and it was funny. The first like 30 days was a challenge for me. But once I started asking like the right questions and then I started journaling on those, like I sometimes I get like emotional with the responses that I had like inside of me. And that's the quickest way to learn yourself. It really is. And I'm all about journaling now. So I love how you're like bringing that to light from something that we all know, which is the green notebook that every leader carries around, at least in the Army. I think I have like 6 or 7 of them just out in my library right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like that green notebook that you're talking about is
Yeah,
the Swiss Army knife for our brains. Like we
yeah,
use it for, AARs. We use it for our to-do list for the day. We use it to take meeting notes. We use it to, write down what the leader's saying during an operations order. We
yeah,
use it for so much, and that we can do that same thing in our personal lives. And so, for me, that's why back as soon as I retired, I created the Leaders 90-Day Notebook, which is
yeah,
a formatted journal. And in that one, like I found that if a lot of people get just overwhelmed by a blank page, like where do I
yeah,
even start? What do I say? Do I say dear diary? Do I not say, I don't know what to say. And so I just was like, hey, like here's something I did today. Here's a decision I made. Here's something I'm struggling with. Here's something I learned.
yeah,
Here are the things that I accomplished. And it's really cool when you follow a format like that, you can go back, weeks, months later and be like, oh man, like I don't feel like I'm doing a lot. And then you see what you've accomplished and you're like, I actually am, or I'm not sure if I'm a good decision maker. And then you go back and look and you're like, okay, that decision did turn out well.
yeah,
Maybe I'm not. And so, and then like, what am I thankful for? And that question right there, I have learned that like sitting in the quiet of the morning or quiet of the night and
yeah.
just looking back over your day and looking for something that you're thankful for as you start going through life looking for things to be grateful for. So it is it is one of those things that I don't know that I would have done if I was younger, but I wish I would have.
I I started picking up the habit when I was blessed and cursed at the same time to be a OCT at JRTC. So
Whew.
I think I pissed off my branch manager when I was at MCCC because I was all in. I was like, "Hey, I want to go to 101st." I just got back from Afghanistan, so I was like a super gun ho major. He's like, "Hey, you're going to JRTC." I was like, "All right, well, okay, we'll do that."
Yeah.
And I loved it so much, I ended up staying there for 4 years and then doing 2 commands in 3rd Brigade, 10th Mountain.
Wow.
But the culture within JRTC when I was going there and walking these platoon leaders as a junior captain and eventually getting the opportunity to walk like company commanders and just seeing the lessons, the good, the bad, the ugly of these brigade combat teams going through a 30-day decisive rotation and pulling those lessons learned. I was like, man, this is like a cheat sheet. I need to try to distill down all these key nuggets because I'm getting ready to go be a company commander next. And I attribute that now, looking back at it, was really like my first introduction to journaling, but through the lens of just professional development. What did that dude do that was good, bad, that I want to emulate or absolutely not do as a leader? But that, I think, looking back at it as we're talking now, I think that was like my first introduction to journaling. And that was kind of the framework that I used.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I'm glad you did. I think, if we're looking career wise, you definitely started a lot sooner than I did. So kudos to you on that.
Yeah. So kind of working through some of the things that you're actively doing. One of the articles that I'm really interested in you kind of talking about because I know there's like a lot of majors that have asked this question, and you have an article that is my career worth it, which is a great article by the way. So walk me through that of because everyone has a season in life, especially in the military, of like you're on a high, you absolutely love it, and then you absolutely hate it. Walk me through that article of your kind of experience through the military, through those different seasons as a company grade officer, as a major, and then ultimately as a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, I think the key word there is seasons. And I
Yeah.
and you know, I as I said in the article, like I came in at the right time and I left when I was supposed to. Um I I owe that to journaling, but there's I don't know, are you familiar, Josh, with the hero's journey?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so the hero's journey is this Joseph Campbell. He's a professor, or he was a professor, and he studied comparative mythology all over the world. Native American, Far East, Celtic,
Mm,
um, Germanic. All these different things, and he found the same plot that was in all of them, and he called it the hero's journey. And essentially, the hero starts out stuck. They don't realize they're a hero.
Uh,
And then there's a call to adventure, whether it's a wise old wizard that shows up and says, come on, let's go do something with this ring, or a droid that shows up and says that, like, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, come save me. But like, there's some sort of herald that shows up. And then I think in our lives, like, it's, a person that you have a conversation with. Maybe you get fired. Maybe you
yeah.
don't get a good OER. Something happens, and then you begin this call to adventure. And the hero steps out into this crazy world, meets crazy people, crazy characters, and ultimately, the apex of this special world is this ordeal, this fight with the villain. The hero slays the villain, and then in slaying the villain, the hero gets this special gift. Whether it's a magical elixir or some sort of special power, it comes back to their community again with this gift. And as I look back on my own life, I think we take the hero's journey multiple times. And I know for a fact, Josh, that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I didn't go on that initial journey of that Army career. Like, there's like one definition of the special world where it's full of outlandish characters. And I think you and I can agree that the Army is 100% full of
Yeah.
of outlandish characters. But the other part of that too is the hero gets help from allies and mentors all along the way. And so, for me, I discovered this gift that I had for leadership, for leader development, for writing and creating by taking the hero's journey and going through that 20-year career in the Army, going through all the highs and lows. Because every challenging assignment that I had, like every low point that I had, I learned something about myself.
Yep.
And, eventually, because of journaling, because of understanding my values, I began to recognize that what the Army needed of me, I was no longer willing to give. Like, it was time for me to leave. Like, I had served my time and now I was ready. I had had the magical elixir, that was my gift of writing, and I was ready to return home and bring this to everybody else and share all these lessons. And so that's ultimately what happened. And I don't think I talked about any of that in the article. But that's ultimately, I think a lot of people, and everybody has different reasons, but they get out of the Army when they're not ready yet.
Yep.
They have a bad assignment, they have a bad commander, things don't necessarily go their way. And for me, I think that I got out like right when it was time. Like, I started feeling this pull several years ago that I needed to step out and embrace this new identity as a writer. And it was time to shed that old one as a military leader.
I think that's a powerful statement right there, man. Is that a lot of people who get out of the military before their time is really up, that's where the darkness kind of creeps in a way, right? Like, if we move into the civilian world and we're not fully complete yet with what we need to do in the military, it's hard to reconnect with like that same passion and purpose. And like, to me, like, that's a formula for fulfillment. You've culminated, I guess, like, use a military term, like in the military, you did everything you wanted to do, and you knew it was the right time for you to transition out. A lot of people, they'll get frustrated. I remember some really, really good friends of mine who are stuck on brigade staff with me, waiting for a company commander, like, screw it, I'm going to go get a headhunter company. I'm going to get out. And I was in that same boat too. Like, I was interviewing with headhunter companies. And then I was starting to think of like, hey, I deserve a command. I do all these things. And then I realized, like, hey, that's kind of like selfish. I know what the big picture is. I want to be a company commander, and I want to go do my O5 command. These are the things that I want to do. And these are my long-term goals. Like, this is just a season that I'm going in right now. But how you kind of frame that beautifully, like within a hero's journey, kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but it's called a story brand framework.
Yeah.
It's almost pretty similar. But that's guarantee you that's where that guy got that.
Yeah. That's
from.
where Donald, I can't remember his name, but that's
Can't think
exactly
of his name.
where
Yeah.
he got it from. And And there's something else too. Like I used to have this conversation a lot with my wife. But like in command, like I think that like when you're on your path, and Joseph Campbell says, is that when you're on your path, doors will open where there weren't doors before, and doors will
Mm,
open for you that wouldn't have opened for anybody else. And so like when in kind of like in this hero's journey mindset that Campbell produces, is that there's like signs and symbols like all around you that let you know that, hey, you are on the right path. And I remember all throughout command, like helping people through major life transitions, whether it was a
yep,
divorce, whether it was getting out of the army, whether it was changing branches, going to a special mission unit, going special forces.
yep,
Um, I mean, there were so many different things that happened, and I recognized that like I was right where I needed to be at the right time for those people. Like that was the role that I was supposed to play.
mm,
And so for me, that was like, okay, this is where I was at. This is where I was supposed to be all along, was to be
yeah,
in this position. And so I think now like it's crazy. So the doors where there were no doors before and wouldn't be for
yeah.
anybody else, it was like 6 months before I was out of the army. And it's one thing. Have you seen Jerry Maguire, Josh?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, dude, it's one thing to be like, all right, I'm getting out, I'm going to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And then when the reality of that hits you, it is the scariest thing. People ask me, like, was it a tough decision? It wasn't a tough decision. But once I made it, I was scared to death.
Mm,
I had absolute faith that the doors would open that were supposed to open. I just didn't like, I just wasn't sure how the story was going to unfold. And so I remember it was January 1st, and it was like, okay, I'm changing command in 6 months, and I'm gonna go on internal leave right from there.
yeah.
And I sat down with my wife, and like we looked at our finances about like what it was gonna look like when we got back here to North Carolina. And I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work. Like this is really scary. And within a week, Ryan Holiday reached out and was like, hey man, what are you doing next? And I was
Wow.
like, I'm still figuring it out. And I was like, I don't know, like I need to take time or whatever. And I remember he's like, I think it would be a lot better if you knew you had something to go into. It would take some stress off. And
Mhm.
so we basically were like, I was like, okay, let's do it. And so that ended up, I've learned so much about writing since getting out and working with him. And so I like again, it goes back to like the hero's journey. Like
Yeah.
that was like in my mind the universe showing that like, okay, you're ready for this next phase now as a writer with that gift.
Yeah, that's absolute gold. And I never shy away like from my faith. It's a pillar of like who I am. But I always think that there's like God whispers like on my journey, and I've always looked back at that, and I've never thought of it like a hero's journey perspective. But one of the quick story, and then I'll shut up because you're in the
No,
spotlight.
man, you're good. This is
Um,
your show.
um, I was company command. I've lost soldiers in combat, but it's always harder to lose soldiers in garrison
Yeah.
to like preventable things. I'm from rural West Virginia. Not common, right? Especially for like army officers. Like I had two soldiers that both passed away in my first company command from rural West Virginia.
Oh wow.
One of them was Hurricane, but if you're from West Virginia, it's called Hurricane. Don't
Yeah.
ask me why. That's just the name
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
The first time that that happened, I was really like questioning myself as like a leader. Like, am I made for this? Am I cut out for this? Maybe I've culminated. Maybe I'm no longer like what the army needs me to be. And then the second time it happened, I was in Iraq, and I got like that notification for the SIR six. Six means at death. And I was like, F man. And
Yeah.
then I just broke down in front of my sergeant major, and he's like, "Hey, reflect on this." And then see what good comes out of it. And I didn't understand that, but I remember now going to Jacob's memorial, sitting back there with the family, and it just dawned on me, maybe I am the right person. Maybe like these two things happen because I'm from rural West Virginia. I can connect with these families authentically more so than other people could. And then it dawned on me like, well, maybe I still have more in me, and maybe I need to stay in the army for these hard type things. And that was like a pivot point for me. like losing those 2 soldiers and really like deeply reflecting on it, where other people would have been like, screw it, I'm done. I've lost too many people. I'm now going to make a pivot. But I love how you kind of framed that into like that Cortez moment for you. Like when you got out, you you make the decisions easy to do, but once you burn the bridges, there's no retreat. So now you're a civilian, and you have to move forward, right? Like, how are you going to do that? You have that burning desire. And it's funny how like these little God whispers, the right people come into your life at the right time to keep you on azimuth so you keep moving forward.
Yeah, dude, even command, like I had made a decision because I was so happy at JSOC. I loved working there. I loved the
Yeah,
people. We were a good
I
community.
love
My
SOCOM.
wife had an awesome job and I didn't want to
Yeah.
leave. And I had already been selected for command, already selected to go to Germany. And, which is an assignment that people would fight for. And I was like, you know what? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I think that maybe I should just turn that down and just stay here. Like, everything is too good, and
Mm.
I was like wrestling with this decision. And then this sergeant major, this Haitian sergeant major, came up to me and was like, "Hey, man, like I've been thinking, I really think you need a command." And like we hadn't been having a conversation about commanding,
Oh
and
wow.
and then he explained why. And it was like, "Hey, like I think you've been writing about leadership, you've been talking about leadership. Now it's time to put those ideas into action and really
Mm.
test yourself." And he's like, "I think you're going to learn a lot about yourself in the process." And that moment, man, was so heavy for me that like I remember I journaled about it that night and was like, "All right, I'm going to command now."
Wow.
So yeah, I definitely think that, for me, it was the universe sending that herald down to be like, "Hey, keep going. You're not done yet." So and other things happened in command too that was like, okay, like, yep, this was it. This is what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome, brother. So it kind of transitioned out from the Green Notebook. You started doing this while you were active duty. Can you walk me through like what was the inspiration behind that? And then what are some of the free like tools that you're providing right now in terms of from the Green Notebook?
Yeah, so I got pulled up to work for Major General at the time, Major General HR McMaster at the Maneuver
Okay.
Center. And he wanted to create a website where maneuver leaders could come and study the profession. Everything
Mm,
from leadership to maneuver tactics to history. And he pulled in all these amazing minds from outside the military to help work on this. And they were doing it out of the kindness of their hearts. But it was funny because we were doing something, creating something out of nothing
yeah.
with not a real budget.
Yeah.
Everybody and their brother pushed back against it. Oh, you can't post stuff. Like it's got to have a CAC card access. And, when you put something behind the firewall, it immediately kills it. And
Yep.
so it was like one pain point after another. Well, we finally got it up online and it died like as soon as he left. But I remember watching it and being like, man, like I could do something better if I wasn't
Yeah.
confined by the military. So I started the blog and I did that. I did it anonymously actually for the first 6 months because I didn't want people to see a combat arms officer thinking and
Yeah.
writing. I was scared to. And so eventually, like I put my name on it, but then my friends would be like, "Hey, can I post something on your site?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then people I didn't know started asking me too, and started sending me emails for submissions. And then people started volunteering. I asked for people to help out, and they did. And so it's really cool. Like from the Green Notebook is me, but it's also this group of company grade officers who it's passed down. Like some people aren't even in the military anymore, that have kept it going now since 2017. Some of them are in battalion command now.
That's
Some of
awesome.
them are in the process of retiring. But like people, and some of them have retired, but people like volunteers have kept this site going by editing the submission. So we have over 1,000 articles. Our three pillars are read, write, reflect. So there's
Mm,
articles on reading list. There's on writing, which is like we look at it as anything in communication. So how to brief, how to write emails,
yeah.
how to be a better communicator, and then finally reflect. And that's everything from lessons learned in organizations to like, just lessons on life. And
Yeah.
so it ranges from young NCOs all the way up to general officers have posted on the site. And then we have the podcast, which is, I just released episode 147 today, and we are closing in. We're like 1,500 downloads away from 500,000, which
Dude, that's
is
incredible, man.
which is awesome for a small niche podcast.
Yeah.
And then we have the monthly reading list email, which is my reading recommendations. I've been doing that since 17, 3 to 5 books a month that I recommend folks read. And then we have a weekly email, the Sunday email, which is something I've been doing. It's good. It's really forced me to reflect every single week and put like a small email together, like the one that we were just actually talking about with the different roles, responsibilities, and costume or behaviors, responsibilities, and costumes that we have in leadership roles. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so everything we have, Josh, is free.
Yep.
And I've been very fortunate because that stuff is very expensive to do, like
100%.
the podcast editing, the hosting, the
Yep.
newsletter. And so, like Alpha Coffee has, they carried the website forever. Roger Bank, which is this awesome bank that caters just to military, like it was founded by former service members.
Yeah.
And so they make it so easy. And then Adaton, which is completely revolutionizing the way that we do business. And then I'm starting to team up with new folks like Fight Camp
Yep.
and others to help keep it going so everybody can enjoy these free resources. And I'll just say this is that a lot of people are like, oh, that's great, man, that you have this thing. Like, I'm sure it makes a lot of money. No,
Nope.
like, this is a hobby for itself. Like,
Yeah.
the only thing that's awesome about this is like we're not paying out of pocket anymore
Yeah.
because of all these people. So yeah, I think that was a very long answer to a very short question. Sorry.
Dude, but you have so much going on, and we share some similarities too. Because when I started doing this podcast, I was afraid how people would judge me. Like in the active military status, like, hey, here's this infantry guy, and he's posting about leadership, and like, I do it from a standpoint is like, knowledge is free. It's all around us. It's how we communicate that. And maybe the way I define it could resonate with someone. And then when they're put in a position of influence and title and they have that authority, they're going to lead with purpose, integrity, and then motivate people, influence them, inspire them, and maybe save a life, keep someone in the military before they transition out. And to your point too, is like everything is free. And people don't understand that. Like with what you did and what you're doing, the amount of content that you're pushing out that is absolutely free and is gold, by the way. I just listened to the Stan McChrystal of where he talks about convictions equal really like values, that formula that he walked through. That's super powerful. Like where else could you have that type of like open source knowledge base on leadership from the tactical level all the way to the strategic level? 100% free. People pay thousands of dollars for leadership coaches for that stuff, and you're just doing it for free. And that's why I have so much respect for you. That's
I,
awesome.
I appreciate it, man. And as you know, like, you've been doing this for a little bit too. Like, I've seen a lot of people just be like, hey, I want to start a podcast or I want to start a
Yeah.
website. And you really have to be passionate about
Yeah.
doing this in order to just keep doing it, regardless of whether you got a sponsorship this month or not. And I think also like, I looked at it. So I still struggle with telling people stuff, like, yeah, I've learned and my experiences now and reflecting on them I think have granted me like a source of wisdom.
Yeah.
But the way I look at it for myself is I'm just starting a conversation.
Yeah.
Like I'm not telling people, what to do or how to live. I'm just starting a conversation about leadership, starting a conversation about
Yep.
power, like, just recommending that people reflect on the reason why they're doing what they're doing. And for me, like that turns that was like something that Ryan said. It's like you turn the dial down on the
Yeah.
pressure that you put on yourself or that feeling, like you said, like, who's this infantry officer to be talking about or this acquisitions officer to be talking about leadership? Like you're not, you're just starting a conversation about
Yep.
leadership. and you're leaving it up to the other person to finish it. So
Yeah, one of the favorite episodes I think that you've had was with General Steve Marks, and it talks about like how you picked your top 5 values. So Colonel Ramsey did that with Ramsey Oliver did that with us when he came in. Is that he set us down, he went through this framework. Hey, what are your core values? Out of these like 45 that are there, choose your top 5, and then explain to me why those are important to you. And then let's look at that from a formation as a whole. Like there's just so much wisdom there, and like that's the kind of stuff that I think separates what I call a purposeful, accountable leader, a pal, of like just genuinely caring about the right people. And I know that too was like the first time I think in your career that a leader actually sets you
yeah.
down and asks you like, hey, what do you care about, right? Like what are your core values?
Yeah, I was amazed. Like, I don't know I'm sure your experience, because you were infantry, it was the same as mine. But
Yeah,
before that, like you would go in for your initial counseling, especially with
yeah,
your senior rater,
yeah.
and it would be like they wouldn't even let you talk. Like it was like,
Nope.
let me tell you about the organization and my 5 rule, whatever. And like you would leave and you're like, or it'd be like a group of people and they were just talking. And then here's this guy. He's like, hey, here's a list of 50 value cards. I need you to whittle this down to 5. And I need you to figure out your purpose statement. And I
Yeah,
was like, "Oh, man."
it's tough.
Like, this is tough. And then, like, to sit down and have the conversation with him. And I'm glad you brought that up, Josh. Like, I still carry that around in my notebook.
That's awesome.
Those values. And the other thing I learned is that they've evolved, uh,
Mm,
since doing that in 2017 with now Major General Marks. They've evolved in, like, I have a new value that I didn't necessarily notice back then, and I have added that, and I've taken these other values and they've kind of fallen down a little bit. So I think it's really important to continually um, look at those values.
yeah, 100%. And I can't remember the name of the number of that episode, but I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes because that was a pretty impactful one, at least for me.
Yeah, yeah, I've talked about it, and it was funny, that particular interview, this was originally a two-host show, and,
Ah,
the particular interview, I was at BCAP and couldn't make it because the interview time changed, and so the other guy did that particular episode, and they talked about it, but I know I've definitely talked about it several times over the years on the show.
yeah. So what's next for you, man? Like you're crushing it right now from the Green Notebook, getting ready to jump into like the journaling space. What's next for you? Next 5 years, what do you want to accomplish?
Dude, so, so this is probably something that, a lot of people who are goal setters will,
Yeah.
like, frown upon, and you can cut this out if you want. But, like, I have learned that, um, there's a difference between enjoying doing something and saying I've done something. And so
Uh,
like, a lot of people called me because they wanted to say they've done a podcast or say that they've started a blog, but they didn't actually enjoy doing the podcast or doing the blog.
that's wisdom right there, man. I love that.
And so for me, it's my goal for the next 5 years is to enjoy what I'm doing every single day. And so, like, eventually, like, I've written the hero's journey book. I'm sitting on the manuscript right now. I'm gonna hold on to it for a little while, for a bunch of different reasons. But my goal is to write a book, that's published, by a mainstream publisher. So, on one hand, I'm working for Ryan and doing, like, grunt work, but it's like an apprenticeship, and
Yeah.
I'm watching how Ryan writes books and his process. And, like, I just, I've kept notebooks forever. There are notebooks all over this office of quotes and passages. But, like, now sitting on my side table is a box of note cards,
Mm,
which is the same process that Ryan uses, that Robert Greene taught him. And so I'm starting to use that now in my writing. And so we'll see what it produces a couple of years from now. But that's my big thing, man, is to just enjoy what I'm doing and to be able to be present, here at home. So that's my
yeah.
that's my goal for it, just to keep doing that. That's what I want to do.
That is absolute wisdom, because I find myself chasing like that goal versus growth mindset is like I gotta keep going, I gotta keep going, I gotta keep going. But I slow down, find enjoyment in what you're doing, and like everything else will come. That's powerful. And I think that's a good way of like winding down to the final show segment. I call the killer bees. So
No
these are the
gosh.
same 4 questions that I ask everyone on the show. Be brief, be brilliant, be present, be gone. So you'll crush all of them, I'm sure.
All right, let's see.
All right. So first question, what do you believe separates a good leader from an extraordinary leader?
Oh, it's, self-awareness.
Okay. Number two. So this is going to be a hard one, I think, for you. Can you recommend one book or resource or tool that has had a huge impact on your leadership growth?
Mm.
Yeah, I figured that was going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I'll say I'll do the very like one of the very first books I read that has stayed with me over the course of a 20-year career, and that's Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah, that's a good book, man. Number three. What advice would you give someone who's just starting off on their leadership journey?
I would say that to be curious.
I love it.
Never stop being curious. You've never arrived, and continually invest the time and effort into studying your profession, whatever that is.
Last question. So, where can our listeners connect with you and add value to what you're currently doing?
Oh man, that was an easy one, Josh.
Yeah, softball. Wait.
Yeah, www.fromthegreennotebook.com, our website. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and X. Not as much as we used to be, but any of those places, you can reach out. You can DM me or shoot me an email at joe@fromthegreennotebook.com.
Yeah, dude, this has been a phenomenal episode. So thanks for being patient with me of just getting this together. I've had, I think, 4 pages of notes that I've taken. So I'm looking forward to applying these in my leadership journey. So thanks again, brother.
It's awesome, Josh. Thanks for having me on the show, and best of luck to you.